Hello everyone, Luciano Oliveira Lawyers. Today is Wednesday, July the 10th. Now it's 12:32 Rio de Janeiro time. I'm glad to be here with you. We had a live stream this Sunday. We were planning to have our live stream next Sunday, but we actually took advantage of meals from George family channel becoming available. So we did our live stream this Sunday, but we're not gonna have a live stream for the next couple of Sundays. All right, but I'm glad to be here with you today. I see we have some people around. Let's wait for you to warm up and suggest a few topics for us to discuss here live. As usual, if you are here with us, you have a priority. You can suggest topics of your interest for us to discuss. In the meantime, I wanted to discuss about a consultation I had yesterday. It was with a person from the United States. She wanted to buy a couple of properties in Salvador, Bahia, and the idea was to use her self-directed IRA to purchase the properties and to rent those properties out. However, one of the first questions I have whenever I'm discussing with a client during a consultation is about their connection to Brazil. Because I want to understand what is driving, what is making this person, to want to invest in Brazil in the first place. And to my surprise, this person, she didn't have any connections to Brazil, and she was telling me that her desire was to basically diversify her real estate portfolio. And I don't think there is anything wrong with diversifying a portfolio, a real estate portfolio, to incorporate real estate abroad, as long as your portfolio in the United States it's already pretty solid. And I could tell after a few minutes of conversation with this person that she didn't have like an extensive portfolio in the United States in the first place, and she didn't have any connections to Brazil. So I was thinking like maybe that's not a good choice, right? So instead of saying so from right off the bat, like I was explaining to this person like the costs associated with setting up an entity in Brazil to become the owner of the properties in Salvador, and reminding her that she would have like monthly costs with two things. The first thing, she would need a Brazilian legal resident to be responsible for her LLC in Brazil. So you need to pay someone to be the legal responsible for this entity. And this person is going to charge you every single month, right? Of course, you're not going to pay just once. This person is going to be responsible like over time, and therefore you need to pay this person like every single month. And second, you need, whenever you have a business entity in Brazil, it does not matter if it is like 100% Brazilian entity or if it is a LLC coming from abroad to operate in Brazil. You're going to need to file things every single month. Okay, it's not like in the United States. In the United States, you have an LLC, and you're gonna have, I don't know, you have 5 properties, you have a single LLC for each entity, and maybe you're gonna pay a US CPA once a year, right? So that's not how it works in Brazil. In Brazil, you have filings every single month, and not surprisingly, you're gonna be paying the CPA every single month. Right. So, and then when this prospective client, she asked me, all right, so how much would you guess that I will have to pay monthly to this CPA person? I said, I don't think less than $250 a month, right? Because this is not going to be a regular Brazilian accountant or a regular Brazilian CPA for the matter. It must be a Brazilian CPA who understand the nuances of operating an entity that has a foreign ownership. Okay, so that triggers several different requirements, a lot of things that are not common to Brazilian CPAs in general, and therefore, best case scenario, in my opinion, is that you, Miss prospective client, will pay $250 a month, like right off the bat. Okay, on top of that, you're gonna have properties that are gonna cost you 20% a month to have a property manager handling your short-term rentals. Right? Her plan was to do like short-term rentals. So in addition to the charge coming from Airbnb, Booking.com, or whatever you're using, then there is 20% on top of that, right? So I could tell from the get-go that this was not a good idea, and our consultation lasted like 10 minutes. That was like our consultation, 10 minutes. But the prospective client, she was very happy, of course, because in 10 minutes she was able to say, listen, this thing is not for me. Okay, so just sharing this story because like on the other side, the realtors, they were pushing this person to buy a couple of properties because she did have the money to buy a couple of apartments in Salvador. And guess what? Like the realtor was saying, well, don't worry, you're gonna be all right. Okay, so I'm just glad that this person reached out and she was able to find out that Brazil was not for her. All right, I see here Bill, WS Bill. Welcome, Bill. Bill says, Oi, Luciano. Do you know anything about the rate of skin cancer? So many people on the beaches. Is there a high usage of sunscreen? Very interesting question, Bill. Yes. People, they do use like sunscreen. Now, from my personal experience, okay, so this is not something scientific or any studies that I saw anywhere around, but listen, skin cancer, as far as I know, is not common in Brazil, okay, believe it or not. My wife's family, like they come from Manaus. Manaus is the capital of the state of Amazonas. Which is in the north of the country, not surprisingly, in the Amazon, right? Like, so in the Amazon region, you have a state called Amazonas, right? So Amazonas is not the same thing as Amazon. Amazonas is a state within the Amazon region. And like, of course, like I have a close connection to my, wife's family. And we've been married for over 20 years, right? So I'm familiar with, the illness that eventually some of her relatives are going to go through. And I never heard about skin cancer, right? I heard about other types of cancer, and I never heard about it. But why am I talking about my wife's family? Because in Amazon, not surprisingly, like, like it's almost like in the equatorial area of the globe, right? And the sun over there, it's like at peak force, like throughout the year. It does not matter, like which season of the year. Like sun is gonna be blasting fiercely, right? Like on everyone. And I never heard about skin cancer. I know that they have like a high exposure to sunlight. I know because like usually when you see their skin, you're gonna see there is some additional, I'm not sure how to say that. I still think people from the Amazon, they're just gorgeous and beautiful, but you can tell that their skin has some additional damage caused by sunlight when you compare, this person to someone from the south of the country, right? Like I am from São Paulo, I am from the south, my wife, she's from the north, and I can tell, anyone from the north, like they are gonna have something different on their skin. Like usually when they are in their 40s, in their 50s, you can tell that there is some damage on their skin. But curiously enough, I never heard about skin cancer. All right, Bill, I'm glad you asked that question. I hope that provides some, again, it's not like, I'm not providing statistics, it's not a study, it's just my personal experience. Hanks Woodfield, welcome back, Hanks. Could it be that she wanted a viper but then was too afraid to say it? Maybe, Hanks, that's a good question. But listen, whenever we have these consultations, it's just me and the client, and clients are gonna open up big time, right? Like, I mean, they understand that I am under the duty of confidentiality, and if it was the idea, to secure a viper, I think she would have told me so, and it wasn't the case. So first thing, it was very surprising, because why would you pick Brazil, right? But that was the case, and there wasn't an explanation, and I think that's one more reason why the consultation ended so quickly. Because I mean, if she had anything else to say, listen, I don't know, I like capoeira, I like samba, right? Like I like the Brazilian culture, I like Brazilian food. I see myself retiring in Brazil in the future. Like there could be so many reasons, but she didn't have one. So again, from a financial perspective, purely financial perspective, sometimes, particularly if you don't have a bunch of money. If you have a lot of money, like it changes the equation dramatically, because then, listen, life is about experiences, right? If she had a lot of money, I would say, why not? You want to get properties in Brazil. Like I have a very successful immigration attorney client in the United States. I think she's the number one immigration lawyer for Hispanics. Okay, she's like, I'm sure she's number one in the United States, and she bought a couple of properties just because in Brazil, just because she wanted to do so, right? Like she didn't have any reason. She said, "Listen, I'm kind of collecting passports," and I remember, like she was telling me about the other passports. She always traveling throughout the world. She doesn't stay stuck in the United States. Actually, nowadays, she tells me that she spends more time outside of the U.S. than inside the U.S. But she bought a couple of properties, and I wouldn't find a reason for why she wouldn't buy a property just because she wanted to do so. It sounds good to me, but because, like financially, she didn't have any limitations. She didn't set up any LLC, right? So everything pretty straightforward, just fine, okay? All right, we have a Moses. Welcome, Moses. Para você me representar na compra de um imóvel no valor de 400 mil pré-construção, quanto você vai cobrar? Sem assistência na busca de propriedades. All right, so Moses is asking me about support to assist you with the purchase of a pre-construction for the amount of 400,000 reais. Moses, I will assume that you don't need the legal residency, right? Or maybe you're going to just buy the property and then you're going to consider the permanent residency, the Viper, for the future. Okay, so if you just need to buy a property like this, maybe you don't even need to hire us for the all-inclusive, right? All-inclusive is usually when you're going to buy from a private party, when you're going to apply for the Viper. Then I recommended the all-inclusive approach, for which we're going to charge you a percentage. For this thing alone, maybe just a block of hours, just a simple block of hours, it could be enough, because then we take a look at the developer, we take a look at the purchase agreement, and then, we just make sure that there is nothing funky about your transaction. This thing could be done probably, right? Unless it is a small developer in the middle of, like a small town, then it changes because it's almost like a private party selling. But if it is like a mid-sized developer in a major city, a block of 5 hours, that could be more than enough to get you through the purchase the purchase stage, right? Like, and then you just buy, and this thing kind of gets in the automatic because you're just paying these things, and then at the end, they're going to deliver title and so on. But for this thing alone, I think a block of 5 hours. For a block of 5 hours today, we are charging 5,000 reais. Which is roughly, I don't know, like the exchange rate is pretty favorable to the US dollar. So it should be around the 900 US dollars, all right? So yes, send us an email, Moses, to info@oliveiralawyers.com, and just share these 3 lines that you shared over here, and we're gonna take from there. All right, Moses. But glad you know you're doing well. Moses is also sharing, if 2 different lawyers represent me in the purchase of 2 different properties with 2 different proof of address, can the properties be used for residence permit based on real estate investment? Moses, immigration, like the immigration, they don't really care about who's representing you in the purchase. They are going to care if your transactions, if they meet the requirements, right? That's what they're going to be concerned about. They don't care if you're using lawyer A or B. They want to make sure that you're going to have a deed showing Moses' name on it. They are going to want to see that you sent the monies from abroad, right? Like that you are not doing crazy transfer-wise transfers, because transfer-wise transfers, they are good for many things other than applying for the Viper, all right? So you sent the monies correctly to Brazil, you bought the properties, you have the deed on your name, the properties are fully compliant from the regulation for the Golden Visa / Viper, and you're good to go. Okay, they are not going to be concerned if you're using different lawyers. Someone is going to need to file your application for the Golden Visa. And in some cases, like we handle applications for clients who bought a property, using a different type of lawyer. Maybe, a lot of times, like people buy properties, they are not really thinking about the Viper. And then down the road, they decided to move, with the residency in Brazil. And when they are lucky to have bought that property in a compliant manner, then yes, we can even assist the person with a property that was bought already in the past through a different type of attorney. But the choice of attorney, as long as they are doing their job, it shouldn't be a concern in terms of your application, Moses. Ella Belladonna, welcome, Ella. All right, it's actually Marcela. Olá, Luciano. Marcela here. Why didn't she just set it up as a personal investment? The cost to purchase property is much less for Americans and Canadians, especially considering the exchange rates now. Yes, Marcela. So the point here is, for that particular person, she didn't have the monies, okay? So it was a financial constraint, right? Her financials were such that the only source of money was her IRA, right? The IRA is a type of retirement account in the United States, and in this retirement account, you are using monies, right? Like you're getting monies from your either salary or whatever you're making, like you're getting money paid through like a small entity, a small business. If you're using this money like pre-tax, meaning it's not after tax, of course, you're going to be able to send this pre-tax money into your IRA, but the IRA is going to work based on very specific rules, right? So her pool of money was inside her IRA. So for her, it was either buy the properties using the IRA rules or no deal. Okay, Marcela, but I agree. Like, I mean, if you have other sources of income to buy the property personally, I think it does make a lot of sense. And actually here at the firm, most of the transactions, they are going to be done personally. Okay, so probably 80% of the transactions here at the firm, buyers are buying on their personal names, and 20% they are going to be buying using a business entity for some reason, right? So one reason would be the self-directed IRA. That's the retirement account I just told you about. And then a second reason is when you have multiple buyers, right? And you don't want to run into the risk or the certainty of a probate down the road, right? Like, I mean, it's pretty impressive to me, but probably because I am a lawyer, that people don't factor into their planning the fact that we're not gonna be here around forever, right? I mean, hopefully we're gonna be here in this world like for many years to come. But one thing for sure is not gonna be forever. So I'm gonna give an example. Like we have a transaction going on in Rio de Janeiro, and it is like a couple of couples, okay, a couple of couples, like two couples. They are buying an apartment in Rio de Janeiro together. Okay, more. I think it is a kind of for fun project, and they are buying together. They have the resources. They are combining their resources to buy a really nice beachfront property in Rio de Janeiro. They are gonna do short-term rental. And whenever they want to spend the time in Rio de Janeiro, like they're gonna have their own apartment, a really nice apartment, but they don't need that, right? Like it's a for fun project because both wives they are Brazilians, and both husbands they are U.S. citizens. So it's a very unique situation. But like when we discussed it, like during our first consultation. The succession aspect of life came into play, right? What about if someone dies, right? And the question, of course, like we don't want to sound harsh, but the question should be, what about when? It's not if, it's when someone dies, right? Because again, that's just the nature of life. Someone is going to die eventually. So if you have a business entity with 4 different people, once a person dies, there is no impact on the property. And if you're buying personally, probates in Brazil, they are a super pain in the neck. They're horrible, okay? So that's one more reason why sometimes people, particularly when they are buying with more than a couple of buyers, they may choose to buy through a business, because then, a business is not going to necessarily go through, or I mean, the property is not going to go through a probate. The business, right? The business may have some impact because one of the shareholders is going to die. But then, as long as you have a provision in the operating agreement for the entity, the shares from this person who died may be purchased by the remaining shareholders. And therefore, again, no probate. All right. So that's another reason, Marcela. I hope that makes sense. WS Bill asking, thank you. Curiously, could be the vitamin D from the sun or the acai that's so popular. So much want to try acai. All right, Bill. Listen, you never tried acai. Acai is really big. Okay. Today I am in the city of Beberibe. Ceará. I'm gonna right over here, Morro Branco Beach, city of Beberibe, state of Ceará, Brazil, of course, right? So, Bill, just as as a curiosity, right? Like, I mean, today I'm here in Morro Branco Beach, city of Beberibe, Ceará, Brazil, where we have like a small office here. In this location is more for personal reasons than for business reasons, but when we go to downtown here in Beberibe, there is like the city square, right? It's very common, like in smaller cities you have like a central square, and in the central square we have 3 acai shops, all right? whenever you find an acai shop, it's gonna be a mix of acai and ice cream, okay? Because the acai, the way it's consumed, like here in Brazil and of course in the United States and elsewhere, it's like a pasta. It's almost like an ice cream. It's not really an ice cream, right? It's more like a pasta, but it's usually eaten, like in a almost iced manner. So it's a very cold pasta of acai. But like the custom here in Brazil is like you go to an acai shop, and in addition to acai, you're gonna have other flavors of tropical fruits. A very famous one, it's gonna be cupuaçu. I'm typing over here. Cupuaçu fruit goes well with acai. All right, so just as a curiosity, so in this small city, we have a bunch of acai shops. All right, I have William Xavier. William says, hi, Luciano, fantastic work, congrats. Let's meet in Brazil if you are there in August. Yes, William, it's gonna be a pleasure to meet you. William is a very close friend of mine. William, from Integrance, he does exactly the type of work I was talking about, like setting up business entities, performing as the legal representative, for the entity. This is a work that's not done by many players out there, and William does that in addition to being a very close friend of mine. Thank you for showing up, William. And yes, we need to catch up for sure. And I hope to see you in August. All right. I have Aaron. Aaron, welcome to the live stream, Aaron. Aaron is asking, how long can a Canadian stay in Brazil with no visa if the migratory year starts January 1st and I spend 90 days already? Can I do 90 now, 90 January the 1st, go to Peru, come back, 90 more April the 1st? Aaron, so the thing, like about traveling to a neighbor country and coming back, it has worked somewhat, consistently in the past, but things are changing now because, particularly the new administration, they're kind of enforcing, the maximum time per year. And the short answer, the legal answer is that you do not get additional 90 days just because you're coming back into the country, right? So the maximum allowed time per year is going to be 180 days no matter what. So if you go abroad and you come back, you don't reset the clock. You still need to have the same 90 days, and it's not 100 and 180, it's just 90 days. And to get an additional 90 days, you need to get an extension approved until November of 2023. The Brazilian immigration would usually rubber stamp an extension request, but now with the new administration, they are making it harder. They are saying, listen, what is the reason? Well, the reason is I love Brazil, right? Maybe the immigration officer, they like your answer, they're going to give you the extension, but nowadays they want like a stronger reason, okay? Like maybe, like I don't know, I had like some type of, accident. Now I have some pain in my back and I'm going to the chiropractor locally here in Brazil and I need to complete my treatment, to take a 10-hour flight back to the United States. That would be a pretty, good reason for you to get an extension, okay? But just because you love Brazil or because you found, the girl of your dreams like in Brazil and you want to stay longer, there should not be a reason for you to get an extension, okay? So traveling abroad, it does not reset the allowed time in Brazil, and just to want to stay longer in Brazil, it's also not a reason for you to get an extension, right? Now, whenever I say this, someone is gonna, share that, well, I just traveled over there and I got an additional 9 days. Well, whenever you enter Brazil, right, like the border agents, like 100%, as far as I can tell, they are not really government personnel. They are outsourced, right? Like other than those who are gonna be showing like there is a specific like they have a specific card or sign from the federal police, then you can tell they are, actually public, servants, public employees. But most of the personnel, they are asking the person who's going to be checking my passport, are you, a public servant? And I never had an answer other than, no, I'm not. Okay, I'm outsourced. Okay, so that may help explain why so many exceptions in terms of the types of answers and experiences that foreign citizens have when entering Brazil. But I'm gonna give you the official answer. The official answer is you don't get 90 days just because you're coming back again to Brazil. You have just 90 days per year, and if you get an extension granted, then that you get an additional 90 days. That rule is gonna apply to U.S. citizens, Canadians, and Australians, right? It's almost like a block in the Brazilian government's head. Whenever they are enforcing rules, they are going to have U.S., Canadians, and Australians in the same kind of pool of nationalities, right? Not surprisingly, they are very close culturally, language, and all of them, they are going to make sure they ask Brazilians for a visa. Okay, so that's why the Brazilian government is going to combine those nationalities in a kind of basket. Okay, and just because we are touching this subject, you guys know, I shared here so many times, there was a plan to make those nationalities get a visa before traveling to Brazil. We actually helped many people apply for the e-visa. It is an electronic visa. You don't need to go to a consulate. It is a visa that you can apply remotely. The President Lula administration, they tried for 4 times to make this as a requirement, and they did not succeed because the prior administration, they did a pretty good job at like allowing more citizens from these 3 nationalities to come into Brazil and spend a boatload of money. Okay, so from an economic perspective, what's going on nowadays is like President Lula, he's pretty settled in making those nationalities to get a visa, particularly because if you get a visa, first, it's not difficult. Okay, second, you're going to be paying $80. All right, so no harm financially, pretty easy to do remotely. So I understand President Lula. I mean, he's not asking a lot, right? Like if he was asking for people to go to a consulate, I would understand. That's no sense. But President Lula was pretty reasonable. He was saying, listen, let's just make them pay $80 and apply for a visa using an electronic system. Pretty reasonable request from President Lula. But President Bolsonaro, the prior administration, was so successful in terms of bringing citizens from those 3 countries and spending a boatload of money that the Brazilian Congress said, no, you're not going to play. You're not going to play with such an important segment of our economy. And therefore, if you enforce the visa requirement, guess what? We're going to pass a bill saying that your requirement is no good, meaning that they would kind of like revert this requirement from the federal administration. And therefore, it was on April, like the last update in this soap opera, it was on April the 9th of 2024, April the 9th. It was one day before. It was in the evening of the day before that the Lula administration said, you know what, we're going to postpone for 1 more year, right? Basically, just to save face, because, they tried for 3 times before that. They couldn't get it done. They tried a 4th time, no luck. And they just postponed a year. And if I had to guess, they are not going to be successful on April 10th, 2025. But I mean, they are just like, dragging on and seeing and checking if there is an opportunity to enforce something that for the President Lula administration is pretty important, right? Like, and I like this perspective of President Lula. He says that Brazil should respect itself, right? Like to have to say, listen, this is not like Casa da Mãe Joana, as we say in Portuguese. This is not like nobody's house. Like, this is Brazil. If you come into Brazil, we deserve respect. You gotta come here. You get a visa before coming over here, right? That's the take from President Lula. So I respect that perspective, and let's see how it works in the near future. All right. Marcela says, interesting, totally makes sense. Obrigada. Marcela is sharing with Bill. Açaí. I like mine with banana and granola. True, Marcela. It tastes really great with banana and granola. Açaí is the best, along with many other foods like coxinha, pastel, and feijoada. That's true, Marcela. And talking about coxinha, I was doing some filming here locally in the city of Beberibe. And one of the the videos that I produced, it was like what I have for lunch, what I like to have for lunch. I like to have like espresso, right? Coffee espresso with milk and a coxinha. The coxinha here is pretty big, so this is like a big snack plus coffee and milk, and I can continue to function throughout the day. And then in the evening, I'm gonna have a real meal with usually here we have amazing fish, so I really like fish. Rice for I guess most of you would know, like, rice is a staple in our culinary. Like, we eat pretty much in all the meals other than breakfast, right? Like, I mean, maybe Indians like rice more than us Brazilians, because Indians, they're gonna have rice in the breakfast. We don't have rice in the breakfast, but for lunch and dinner, like, we have like I have I have rice probably 7 days a week, like for dinner, right? Lunch, if I'm gonna have a lunch with someone, then yes, I'm gonna have not a coxinha, I'm gonna have a real meal, and with rice and something else. And usually here in Beberibe, we have a lot of good fish. Like, fish is caught like in the early hours of the day, like 4 a.m. in the morning, 5 a.m. in the morning. So at 7 a.m. in the morning, usually I am at the market. 7 a.m. in the morning, I am at the market buying fish, for the day. So an amazing place. People here started their days really early. Some people over here, they are gonna have lunch at 10:30 in the morning, 11 a.m. in the morning. So very different culture from the south of Brazil, like in Brazil, in São Paulo, Rio de Janeiro. Nobody's gonna have a lunch before 12. Okay, so if you go to a restaurant at 11 a.m. in the morning, they say, well, food is already. Come back at 11:45. 11:45, they are already serving the food. But here, like in Ceará, in the state of Ceará, and other northeastern states, it's very customary for people to have lunch and for them a dinner earlier in the day. So people wake up here particularly, right? Like in this city, people are usually waking up at 4:30 to 5 a.m. in the morning. Like sometimes they go to the gym like 5:30 or 6 a.m. in the morning. And many business establishments, they are going to open their doors at 7 a.m. sharp, right? So if you're going to go to a store, it would be a good guess that at 7:05, like, they're going to have open doors to take care of your business. All right, William, thank you for the considerations, my friend. You're pretty welcome, William. All right, Marcela is sharing acerola. Exactly, acerola. I don't know why I don't see acerola in this part of Ceará a lot. Acerola is already big in São Paulo, Rio de Janeiro, just like açaí. Cupuaçu, it's something that you don't see very often in the south of the country. But acerola, it's pretty pretty good for juice as well, right, Marcela? All right, WS Bill says, so cool, Marcela, I can't wait to try. Moses is asking, if I purchase and decided to pay instrumentally and it takes 3 years to complete the payment, will your legal fee be the same as when I purchase with cash? Right, so Moses, for your transaction, we're talking about a block of hours, right? And if you're buying a property from the developer, usually we're going to review the transaction up front. And because, you know, like the purchasing agreement, the purchase agreement is going to drive the transaction. So as long as we review the purchase agreement and we know that the developer is solid, the chances that the remainder of the transaction is going to work peacefully is going to be pretty high, right? So for your case, what I had in mind is just a block of hours. We review the purchase agreement, we do some checking on the developer, and then you can make like an informed decision, right? So that's the idea. Even if you're gonna be like 3 years paying, you know, the developer, this work could be done like at the inception of your transaction. All right, Marcela is answering Bill that she's from Central Canada and she spends part of her time in the US, been to Brazil several times, and in my opinion is one of the best places in the world. Great people, amazing food and music. Stop right there, Marcelo, otherwise I'm gonna cry. I'm very emotional, and yes, we all love Brazil. Yes, saudades, that's it. Pão de queijo every morning in Rio de Janeiro. Yes, pão de queijo is another major staple in Brazilian culinary. Pão de queijo, let's give credit. It came originally from Minas Gerais, right? Minas Gerais is another major state in Brazil, and they're pretty good with culinary. Like, you know, Minas Gerais food is out of this world, right? Like, I think if we had to rank the Brazilian states regarding the quality and you know, like the culinary, I think Minas Gerais would be on the top of any list, right? They are super solid, super good, and that's the state that came up with the pão de queijo. But now pão de queijo, it's like present in every single state, right? So if you're arriving at a Brazilian airport, I don't care which airport we're talking about, you're gonna find a shop called, I'm right over here, Casa do Pão de Queijo. All right, translation for pão de queijo, it's cheese bread. It doesn't make justice, because cheese bread, like when I eat one at Panera, I think I don't like it. I'm not gonna share my whole opinion. I'm just gonna say that I don't like, so I don't offend those who like Panera. But it doesn't make justice, right? Like the cheese bread from Brazil, particularly if you're buying from Casa do Pão de Queijo or the cheese bread house, or if you're buying, if you're eating something, some cheese bread or pão de queijo that is homemade, like it's extremely tasteful, and it's like an artisan thing, and it's really tasteful. Like you can compare, you know, to food that you would eat at a Panera bread, for instance. It's like 1,000 years better, okay? Again, that's my opinion, right? I really love pão de queijo, but nowadays you find it in every single airport. You can eat, every single airport in Brazil, of course, you can eat pão de queijo. And just like Marcela said, pão de queijo every morning in Rio and elsewhere in Brazil. All right. Bill says, thank you for being so flexible with the live stream. My pleasure, Bill. It's always my pleasure. I'm really happy to have, you know, your participation, Marcela's participation, and everyone else. It does help a lot. You know, the live stream doesn't get too technical, right? Like we can have a mix of technical subjects and lighter subjects, because we are here to learn, to share experiences, and to have fun, right? So you're pretty welcome. Keep the participation coming, Marcela. It's very good to have someone with experience in Brazil to share a different perspective, right? Like my perspective is the perspective of a Brazilian guy who was born and raised and became like an older adult in Brazil, like true fall. And my exposure to the United States, in particular, it was much later in my adult life. So I do have a very different perspective from someone who comes from a different country. And it's really good to have your guys' take on it. Okay, Ronnie Dio, good to see you, Ronnie. I was missing you here. Ronnie is asking, do you have a realtor you trust and can recommend for Rio de Janeiro? Ronnie, so we can share a couple of realtors. Send an email to info@oliveiralawyers.com saying the subject. Luciano said you would share the realtors info for Rio, and I'm gonna tell you why we are trying to avoid sharing this information. Just because usually there is a gap in expectation, a gap in expectation, between what you expect as a client and what the realtor is going to deliver. And we had some issues, like we were sharing this information, freely without charging anything, just as a start point. And some people would get back to us and say, listen, I'm not satisfied. The realtor did that, and this was no good, like really upset at us, right? Because we did share the realtor's contact information as a start point. And so that's our concern. Sometimes you're going to be doing something, to help, to offer you maybe one more option. And if the realtor does not perform, sometimes people are going to shoot the messenger, right? They're going to shoot the messenger. They want to shoot someone, and then they end up shooting the messenger. And that's why we usually try to avoid sharing, a realtor's information. Realtors, I understand sometimes, the way I talk about realtors, it may sound like I am being critical, but that's not the case. Realtors, they have a specific role. They need to connect buyers to sellers. Sometimes, if they are going to pay attention to all the details, there's not going to be a deal. So I see that happening very often. Realtors, just like in the example I gave you at the beginning of this live stream, right? Like the realtor was telling the US client with the self-directed IRA, don't worry, be happy, go ahead, you're not going to have any issues, you're not going to spend any money. In this case, unfortunately, I think the realtor crossed a line, right? It was basically, incorrect information that would harm the client a lot, by the way. But most of the time, the realtors, they are going to have this role of, let's say, minimizing the challenges or downplaying the risks in order to make a transaction go through. Because for foreign citizens, the Brazilian market is so challenging that if they are going to operate, they are going to try to purchase real estate in Brazil by using the same standards that they have, for instance, in the United States, nobody's going to buy a single property, right? There's not going to be any deal at all. So the realtors, they try probably, that's their intention. I'm trying to review their intention from a positive perspective. I think they're trying to make this thing work. And if they don't really cross a line in terms of providing wrongful information, I guess that at the end of the day, by pushing buyers to enter into a transaction is just part of their job, right? If you bought a house in the United States and if you remember about the transaction, maybe to some extent, the realtor was also doing the same job. I would assume it probably in a more kind of nuanced or subtle manner, but still, like a realtor in the United States, in Canada, and elsewhere, their job is to, bring a seller and buyer closer and closer to have a deal. So that's what realtors in Brazil do. But sometimes they're gonna skip, or they are not aware about questions related to monies being sent to Brazil, the fact that in Brazil we don't have an escrow and the person is abroad. So if the seller doesn't perform, that's a super problem for the buyer. And if a Brazilian is in Brazil and the seller doesn't perform, the Brazilian is right here. Brazilian is going to be on the seller's face like every single day, but not the foreign citizen. So the thing is, like, there is this problem that we have, Ronnie, when we share the referrals. Like, usually there is an education process that the person receiving the referral is going to be missing. And when they have this shock, right, this contact with the realtor, and they see this thing working in a way that, from their perspective, is haphazardly, right, they are going to get concerned, and then again they could shoot the messenger, particularly if they are not our clients. Right? If they are our clients, we're going to be educating them, we're going to be participating in the journey, we're going to be also keeping the realtor on track, okay, so they don't do things that they shouldn't be doing. So we would rather not share a referral just because of all of those nuances. But Ronnie, you are always here, and because now I gave you the whole heads up, if you send an email to us, we're going to share a couple of referrals in Rio de Janeiro. And if you're in Rio de Janeiro, Ronnie, don't forget to show up at our office for a cup of coffee. And by the way, we are moving offices. We are moving offices in the same building, right? Like today, we are located in Rio de Janeiro, Avenida Rio Branco, 123. I'm going to write over here. Avenida Rio Branco, 123. And we were, right, I'm going to write before at Suite 1912, okay? Currently at Suite 1702, while we renovate Suite 1712, which will be our brand new shine office in Rio de Janeiro. Okay, so we're doing renovations, like we're moving, like we were, actually renting a suite in 1912. And we were very happy, no need to change places. And the landlord, out of the blue, they asked the space back. And because we were at this office for a while, and then the rental agreement was renewing on a monthly basis, just like it happens in the United States, right? For commercial, usually for commercial rental, you rent for a number, of months, and then you have this option of renewing on a monthly basis. But if that happens, then you don't have a protection. The landlord did, ask the property back, and then we had, to scramble ourselves, and we actually got a finance and bought a space in the same building because we love the building. It's very central in Rio de Janeiro. It's closer to the Santos Dumont Airport. It's like probably a 15-minute walk, and it's a 5-minute drive to downtown, to Santos Dumont Airport. It's a 5-minute drive to the U.S. consulate in Rio de Janeiro. So we are super well located, and I just love downtown. I just love downtown areas. Same arrangement in São Paulo. We are in downtown area. I don't like to go to the like distant neighborhoods. You need to drive a couple of hours, and if you are closer to one client, you're distant from another client. If you are in a central area, you kind of become more available to the average client in general, right? Even though, like in Brazil, a lot of people, they don't like the downtown areas. Like they're downtown, right? Like they're not fancy kind of neighborhood like we have so many in São Paulo and Rio de Janeiro. We love downtown, but just letting you know, Ronnie, when you are in Rio de Janeiro and any of you guys who participate here in our live stream, come to our office for a cup of coffee. All right, we're gonna take a picture. We're gonna add it to our social media, and you're gonna have a nice espresso with our team. Okay, so here is my invitation. And by the way, you don't need to give us a heads up, all right? Just remember, we don't do consultations at the office traditionally, just because like we like to plan our our schedule ahead of time. When we have a consultation, we use Zoom. It's super professional, super good to use. So even like when you're working with our team, either Patrick or Victoria from Rio de Janeiro, we have Atlas in Rio de Janeiro, São Paulo, we have Paulo, we have Victoria, we have Marina, we have other team members. These are some of the ones that work directly with our clients. We do the work over Zoom. So if you show up, you're gonna see some of us in person, but we're not gonna do consultations. We have this type of request. I wanna work with you. I wanna go to the office. It doesn't work really well for us, right? But if you wanna come for a cup of coffee, no heads up needed. Just get our address, show up and say, listen, Luciano said I could come here for a cup of coffee. As long as you don't try to get free advisory, which is not nice, you're welcome for a cup of coffee, all right? Okay, so we're gonna have a couple of more questions. We're gonna have our live stream over Zoom. Just remembering, Bill, as usual, don't forget to like. I really appreciate, Bill. If you guys could like our live stream, that means a lot to me. It means that our live stream is being helpful to you. And this makes our content to be found easier by prospective, clients and people interested in Brazil as well. Thank you so much, Bill. I really appreciate. All right, Marcela. All right, so a couple of additional questions and participations. Marcela is commenting on Sunday's talk was great. Guest mentioned HOA type fees. Do you offer any services for managing properties foreigners buy, like accounting, rental, and the like, or just help with the purchase? Marcela, thank you for sharing. I was wondering, this Sunday we had meals from the George family on the live stream. I'm really happy that you like it. Okay, I don't know why. Maybe we had a problem with the connection through Riverside, which is the platform we use, and YouTube. But for some reason, like the number of viewers were kind of low, so I was concerned the topic was not popular. But yes, the idea was to bring some a new face and a new talking head, to enlighten you guys with new information. And yes, we discussed about the HOA fees. The HOA is the Homeowners Association. That's how it's said in the United States. There are different terms, like if you're in Europe, but the concept is like if you have a building with apartments, with condos, or if you have like it could be like not necessarily a building, like you have communities of houses, splitting the cost of services and personnel and maintenance and utilities and whatnot. This thing I usually call HOA fees, Homeowners Association fees. And the thing, just for those of you who were not in the live stream on Sunday, that Marcela is mentioning over here, it's the cost that you're gonna have even if you buy the property. So if you buy an apartment in Rio de Janeiro, right? If Moses buy a property in Rio de Janeiro or São Paulo or Salvador, it does not matter where. If you buy an apartment, you're gonna need to pay the HOA fees, all right? And these HOA fees, they are concerning in Brazil at some extension, right? Like they're just part of life. So you either live with them or you go elsewhere, okay? They are part of life in Brazil. The HOA fees, unfortunately, in Brazil, they're going to be on the higher side. They're going to be on the higher side because In Brazil, like we're gonna spend a lot of money on safety, right? Security. So we're gonna have, like electric fences. We're gonna have a fully automated, garage doors. We're gonna have, sophisticated camera systems throughout the building. We're gonna pay, private security. If something goes wrong, we can call them on the spot. And on top of that, we're gonna have, to operate all these things, we're gonna have a bunch of employees for every single building. So employees in Brazil, that's a pet problem of mine with, the current administration. The labor laws, they are, from 100 years ago, they are not competitive. They hurt Brazil a lot. And the problem here is like for you to hire employees, you need to commit to a set of benefits and rules that do not allow Brazil to be competitive. Okay, but just going back here to the point, like they're gonna cause a huge, they're gonna cost a lot of money to the homeowners association, and guess what? Someone needs to pay for all these benefits, for all these rules, for all these things from 100 years ago, and this person is going to be you, okay? And therefore, when you get the HOA monthly fees, this amount is usually surprising, very surprising to foreign buyers, all right? And it does not matter. Even like our clients, I have a client buying right now. We have two clients who are buying really, higher amount properties. We have a client in Guarujá, which is the coastal side of São Paulo by the beach. He's buying a property between 3.2 and 3.5 million reais. Okay, and I have another client who's buying. This one is in São Paulo, right? Guarujá. We have another client who's buying a large property in Petrópolis, which is like the countryside of the state of Rio de Janeiro. He's buying a property for 4.5 million reais. And the person buying the 4.5 million reais property, he's not really concerned about the HOA because it's more like, just like the security is not like so many things that they're doing over there. So the HOA fees are somewhat reasonable, but the one in Guarujá, São Paulo, he can't believe how high the HOA fees are, right? I think they are like about $1,000 per month, all right? This is just the HOA fee. And again, the guy is not renting, he's buying the property, and he's gonna need to spend about $1,000 a month in HOA fees. But granted, this is like a really high-end property, but still, like for lower-end properties and studios, the HOA fee sometimes is gonna like surprise foreign citizens, and unfortunately, they are gonna surprise not in a positive manner. All right, but again, this is a fact of life. That's how things work in Brazil. All right, Barry Downing, good to see you here, Downing. Barry is congratulating Marcela for the question. Thank you for chiming in, Barry. All right, final one, Hanks Woodfield. Which city do you prefer, Rio de Janeiro or São Paulo? Hanks, I'm gonna suggest for you a particular video that we have in our YouTube channel. It was an interview with a client of ours. Okay, it was with a client of ours, and he just loves São Paulo. Okay, and he says, I am not a beach type of person, right? So he spent some time in Rio de Janeiro. He doesn't like Rio de Janeiro, but he loves São Paulo. And I have a bunch of clients who are just like him, like they love São Paulo. They cannot stand Rio de Janeiro. They don't want to go to Rio de Janeiro. They just want to stay in São Paulo, okay? A bunch of people. In my case, I am from São Paulo, right? I spent most of my life in São Paulo, okay? But life happens, right? I had family now. All my, not surprisingly, right? All my grandparents, they passed away. My father, he passed away. My mother, she currently lives with my sister in Portugal, okay? And many of my family members, they moved out of São Paulo. Okay, São Paulo is a big city. It's just like in New York City, right? Like I think New York City is pretty good for a certain stage of your life, but maybe not forever, right? So São Paulo is the same thing for me. São Paulo, that's where I spent most of my life. That's where we still have, I would say, I think our most important processes as a law firm, they happen in São Paulo still. That's where I have probably most of my senior team members. They are still in São Paulo. Now, personally, I have a better time in Rio de Janeiro, okay? Because when I am in Rio de Janeiro, I am more like an outsider. And by the way, just my accent alone, like, accents like, Sao Paulo and Rio de Janeiro, they are super different, okay? It's very, like when someone from Sao Paulo, like me, when we listen to someone from Rio de Janeiro, it's like it calls your attention, like how different the accent could be inside the same country. And the same thing, like people from Rio de Janeiro. So when I am in Rio de Janeiro, I am kind of an outsider, and at the same time, I'm really well received. Like, I mean, people from Rio de Janeiro, they're super friendly. They can tell that I am from São Paulo, but that is not going to affect my relationship with anyone in Rio de Janeiro. If it does affect, it's actually going to be for the better, because they say, well, this guy is not from here. Let's, make him feel home, right? That's how I really feel in Rio de Janeiro. So I am in Rio de Janeiro. I have a very personal experience, right? And when I am in São Paulo, it's my hometown, right? So it's the same thing that I've been, experienced for so many decades. But when I am in Rio, I'm always having a blast. It's like I'm an outsider, even though I'm very often in Rio de Janeiro. Of course, like because of our business in Rio de Janeiro, because of our office. But I have a blast in Rio de Janeiro. So nowadays, I would say I do prefer Rio de Janeiro. But for most of my life, I probably would pick São Paulo as my place to be. Okay? And take a look. Gerard, that's the name of our client, Nardini. Gerard Nardini, Jerry Nardini. Now I remember his name, Jerry Nardini. All right, let's do Jerry Nardini. I just entered Jerry's name here at the chat window. So my recommendation for you guys, Hanks in particular, Hanks, Google Jerry Nardini in our channel, and I had a whole video, like I think it was like 40 or 50 minutes, just discussing about nuances of living in São Paulo, Jerry's experience as a U.S. citizen, why he would pick São Paulo. I also, I was trying to, push him to compare. I also asked him why not Portugal, for instance, right? And his answers, they were pretty revealing about why people who love São Paulo, they love São Paulo in a really decisive manner. All right, Hanks, I hope that helps. And that's it for today's, folks. I really appreciate it. It was really nice to see Marcela over here today. Marcela brought a lot of perspectives, right? And all of you, I understand most of you are in your journeys to become like a Brazilian from a certain perspective, and not why a true Brazilian at some point, right? Like remember Mills from Sunday, she doesn't really speak Portuguese, but listen, she is a Brazilian as much as I am, because she got the citizenship, right? Who is here to say that she's not the same as I am? So Mills is a Brazilian. She has a passport, she has the citizenship, and she loves Brazil. So you guys could be in the same spot in the future. And that's what's great about Brazil. Brazil is really welcoming, just like as Bill said. And you guys are going to be someday in the same point in which Marcela is. Marcela knows a lot about Brazil, and I hope you guys are going to be sharing your perspective here in the future, just like Marcela did today. Marcela, you must be here in our next live streams. I'm going to count on you. And that's it for today, folks. So we're not meeting next Sunday. This Sunday, we're not going to be meeting. We're going to be meeting on the next Wednesday, all right? Just making sure you guys know we're going to be here on the 17th, July 17th. All right? You guys take care. Have a blessed rest of your Wednesday.